For chapters 9 and 10, we covered delivering and using language and visual aids and presentation. Within chapter 9, over delivery and using language, we discussed delivery itself. You could read from a manuscript or by memory or speaking extemporaneously. So with speaking from a manuscript, this is where you're basically reading off of a paper. This is what a lot of politicians utilize. However, you make it to where it doesn't seem like you're just reading verbatim from a paper. You have it in front of you and use it to read what you're saying so you don't forget, but it doesn't sound like you're just reading straight out of a textbook. By memory, this is what people like actors and people in theater use. This is completely memorizing your speech in your memory without using any type of cue cards or manuscripts to read off of. A lot of people shy away from this because it is hard sometimes to remember everything you're going to say just on memory. Speaking extemporaneously is what we do in class with public speaking. If it weren't online, we would be doing this in class in front of everyone, just like professors do. Along with that, your voice is a way of delivery. Just because you are speaking about what you're saying accurately doesn't mean that it's being portrayed well to your audience. You have to use good methods of delivery to actually drive home what you're saying. You must focus on volume and articulation. Volume is how you use volume with the sound of your voice, the level of how you're speaking with what you're relaying. If you're trying to put emphasis on a certain part of what you're saying because it's more important, you could consider raising your volume to draw in your readers again, or your audience again. With articulation, especially with a topic that people are unaware of, with words that they're not familiar to, you'd need to say these words clearly so that it's not just rummaged over when you're actually speaking to someone. If you're articulating your words clearly, your audience will hear this and actually understand what you're saying better rather than just zoning out because they're not understanding the words you're saying to them. With this, your body language is also a key part of your nonverbal communication to your audience. Eye contact, movement on the stage or wherever you're speaking, and gestures of your body are important. Eye contact actually makes people focus on you. If you're not looking at them, they will tend to not look at you and lose focus. Maintaining eye contact actually makes them feel like you're speaking to them and not just at everyone in the audience. With movement, try to move around on your stage or whatever platform you're on to keep the audience following you and not just zoning out. If you're moving around on stage and not just standing straight forward, just no movement at all in front of a podium, they're more likely to listen to you and follow what you're saying. Hand gestures are also another way to keep it interesting and give it another level. If you're just standing there straight with no movement in your body, it's going to seem awkward and not as personable. And to chapter 10, this is visual aids and presentation. So different types of visual aids are charts, graphs, video clips, or PowerPoints. So with a chart, if you're talking about something with a statistic or a certain number compared to another certain number, you could use a chart to show this. The chart could have one part of a statistic or a percentage showing that more clearly and giving a better relative example. With graphics, this can be any type of visual or picture that shows what you're trying to say and gives a better image. If what you're saying isn't clear just through words, an image can help drive what you're saying to the audience and get them to understand it better. Video clips are also efficient. With video clips, you want to make sure it's something that's to the point and really relates to what you're saying and not just something the audience will lose interest in or feel it's too long or irrelevant. PowerPoints are also a good way to keep you on track with what you're saying also and keep your audience aware of what you're speaking on. Don't just have a paragraph on a video or on a PowerPoint. This isn't how you should do a PowerPoint efficiently, and just having everything you're saying on your PowerPoint makes the PowerPoint pointless. Keep it short and to the point that is enough for you to have your memory triggered about what you're saying and also show the audience what you're speaking on chronologically. Along with that, visual aids are something you should incorporate into your speeches to be more efficient. Choose an aid that fits your topic. If you're not talking about something with numbers, a chart or pie chart might not be what you should use. That's usually to show in comparison numbers. If you're showing something that has steps to it, you might want to use some type of flowchart or a graphic that shows this. Picking an appropriate visual aid is what actually makes it helpful in your speech. If it's not appropriate or fitting, it actually might be more of a distraction than something that helps and elevates your speech. With that, you should also follow the guidelines. Don't make it anything that's too big or can't be brought into class easily. If it's something you're going to be fumbling around with or struggling to set up, it's not going to help get the attention to your speech. It's going to be more of a distraction to your audience. Also, make sure it's legal. If you're bringing it on campus, it obviously can't be any type of weapon or anything else that you couldn't, on a daily basis, bring into class. Bring it prepared and ready to go. If you're trying to put it together or fumble with it while people are looking at you in front of them, it's not going to help. It's just going to be a distraction and already bring down your speech. If it's some type of electronic present or visual aid, make sure you have it prepared and come early so that you can have it set up and ready to go once your speech is ready to begin. Don't be setting it up after you should have already begun your speech. Also, you must effectively display your visual aids. If the audience can't see it, it's not helpful. Don't use fonts that are neon yellows or pinks in a PowerPoint presentation that the audience can't see. Don't use fonts that are too small for the person in the back of the room to see. If they look up and try to read what you're saying and they can't read it, they might lose complete focus on what you're saying or lose interest completely. Along with that, you should also know that you can use these in other classes. So with using visual aids in other classes, you might have to tweak it a little bit depending on the class. However, these are basic guidelines that you can apply in other classes also. Integrating visual aids into presentations at work is another thing that you can do in the future. So if you're going to use a proper visual aid, this is definitely important in work. Now you're actually presenting something that's going to help the workplace overall move more efficiently. You're not just explaining something to peers anymore, you're actually explaining something that's going to be put into practice in the workplace. You definitely want to make sure your visual aid is appropriate and actually elevates what you're saying and helps your coworkers understand and actually act on what you're saying. So, with that, I actually did not know that there were as many delivery types as there is. I had never heard of extemporaneously delivering, which is how we do in class actually. I did not know that was what that was called. And also, take into consideration using these guidelines into your career. If you have a career where you're going to give a presentation, you should definitely use some type of visual aid. This will make it seem like you're more prepared and know more about what you're talking about, and are able to explain it better to who you are speaking to. Like we said though, you might have to tweak it a bit according to your career and what your job is and what you're trying to explain. These ideas are important because knowing your topic is not enough to deliver an effective speech. Knowing what you're talking about and being accurate is important. However, if you're not relaying it well, then your speech isn't going to come across well. Body language and nonverbal communication overall is just as important as knowing what you're talking about. So with that, this is a good rundown of what we covered in Chapter 9 and 10 and how you should speak and use these delivery methods and visual aids effectively.